Welcome back. Let's take you to Beijing now, where African countries are on a quest to strengthen their relationship with China and get billions of dollars in investment. The Forum on China-Africa Cooperation is wrapping up in Beijing, as I said earlier. Samkele Maseko is there for us, and we speak to him now. Mr. Maseko, good morning to you. So, you are in China. It must be a nice experience. Talk to me about what is on the agenda today.
Well, in the early hours of this morning, China time, there was a round table led by the South African delegation, led by President Cyril Ramaphosa and Minister of Finance Nhlanhla Nene, which was in a round table with other African countries and China, speaking about investment issues on infrastructural development into Africa. We understand that later on today, China time, the President of South Africa and Chinese President Xi Jinping will be closing for FOCAC, the Forum of Cooperation between China and Africa. Later on today, there will be an open address where two members of the South African media contingent will be going on to the Great Hall for that closing address to be addressed by President Cyril Ramaphosa, who's co-chairing FOCAC with Chinese President Xi Jinping. And then later on in the evening today, we may get an opportunity as the South African media, separate from the Chinese media, to engage with the South African president on how successful or non-successful, depending on the outcome, South Africa may have achieved in this FOCAC summit later on this evening today, after the closing address by President Cyril Ramaphosa and the President of China, Xi Jinping.
So, Samkele, our president speaking yesterday, saying that the relationship between China and the African states has got to be a win-win cooperation. It's got to be balanced. Is that the sentiment from the African perspective?
Yes, indeed, you'd understand that the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, was largely speaking on behalf of all other African countries, saying that it can't be that Africa only exports commodities to China, yet China exports value-added goods to South Africa. This relationship has to be mutually beneficial, where Africa, and not only South Africa, is able to beneficiate its natural resources and export value-added goods to China in order to get more value out of the raw materials that come out of South Africa and the African continent going to China. That this relationship must not only be one-sided, it must be mutually beneficial, and it's a win-win situation for both Africa and for China. He went on to say that he dismisses the myth that there is a new colonization going on in the African continent, where China is allegedly trying to economically colonize Africa. He's dismissing this myth. You remember the scholar from Kenya, Patrice Lumumba, who's been delivering a number of lectures, particularly in South Africa, once said that we see the Chinese coming, questioning the role and the business that China has in Africa, and questioning whether if this is a new colonization that's taking place economically within the African continent. Many academics have written on this issue of this relationship Africa has with China. So it's a million-dollar question, but it was for the first time that heads of state of Africa were so bold in clarifying and dismissing this issue that China is trying to economically capture or colonize Africa.
Just as a final question to you, Sam, and of course this now is a bit of a challenge to you, from me to you. The Chinese president saying that in July, when he came to Johannesburg for that BRICS summit, saying many Chinese companies are running successful businesses here in South Africa, which attests to this mutually beneficial relationship that is common between China and the African states. How many African-run companies have you seen or identified during your time in China?
Well, Oli, interestingly, we had a business breakfast on the first day of FOCAC between South African businessmen based in China and the South African delegation led by President Cyril Ramaphosa, and various business organizations such as BBC, the Black Business Council led by Sandile Zungu, and BUSA, the Black Business Unity South Africa. We've seen a number of companies. You've got Standard Bank, which is operating here. You've got Discovery. You've got Naspers. But obviously, the South African Business Corporation led, or corporation led here by Mr. van der Vaart spoke on that particular day and said that there are many untapped business opportunities here in China for many South African companies, not just Discovery, not just Naspers, and not just Standard Bank. There must be many more South African businesses that are coming to tap these untapped areas, particularly within the semi-urban areas of China, the semi-rural areas of China, and the rural areas of China, saying that there are many business opportunities here within this country of China that need to be tapped, but that needs bold leadership and visionary leadership by not only the South African political leadership in the form of President Cyril Ramaphosa, but also by the business community of South Africa, whether it be the Black Business Council led by Sandile Zungu or BUSA or any other business corporations or entities that we have in the South African delegation that are here. We've seen a large number of them even led by the former Minister of Finance and the former Minister of Planning in the office of the presidency in the form of Trevor Manuel. They are all here. We've seen business people like Sandile Zungu who may have some business opportunities that they may want to pursue here in China. So there is a large business contingent of South African business people, but that is also here. But the million-dollar question and the plan that has been planted by the President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, by saying that there needs to be beneficiation of South Africa's natural resources in order to export more value-added goods to China, which in there lies a business opportunity for the South African business delegation. That's the challenge that the President of the Republic has tabled to the South African business delegation, and also saying that the President of China, Xi Jinping, is opening up economic corridors for this beneficiation of South Africa's natural resources.
So, Sam, I see that lots of media colleagues that you have there also with you from South Africa. When are you guys coming back home? I'm actually getting a bit jealous now.
No, Toli, we've got 2 more engagements that we have to go to. We'll probably leaving China Wednesday afternoon. The President still has to go to the Huawei factory shop here and then meet with the business owner of Huawei in one of the provinces here, Hangzhou, where they're going to have a mutual meeting. You understand that the President has this 100 billion rands investment project going on to attract 100 billion rands of investment into South Africa over the next 2 to 3 years. So he'll be meeting the Huawei CEO here in China and boss. They'll be having their bilateral meeting, which should be tomorrow, Wednesday, in Hangzhou, where we will be going after we've been to the factory of Huawei. We understand that Huawei has a lot of technology projects going on in the ICT space in South Africa. They've got a number of their cell phones being sold in the market in South Africa. So he'll be going there to seek some sort of a foreign direct investment to this 100 billion rands project that he has into the South African economy over the next 2 to 3 years, which he is running with his 5-pack of lions and lioness, who are the investment envoys that he's sent out to draw that investment into the country. That would be namely Trudy Makaya and ABC Jonas, along with the former Minister of Finance, Trevor Manuel, who's also here along with Trudy Makaya on this official visit to China and for the 4CAC summit that's been taking place over the past 2 days.
Live for us in Beijing in China, Samkele Maseko giving us an update on that summit that is being attended by African heads of state. All right.